that thing just got filthy. And the homeowner she was like, "Oh, God, Michael, this thing, I'm so," and I said, I'm a good friend of mine, Brenda and Tom. I said, "Brenda, hold my beer," figuratively. Hold it. I said, "Watch this." And so I just started going over with a cleaner and a red pad on the buffer, and the dirt just came right up. I thought she was going to leave her husband for me.
Hey, Wood Floor Pros, this is Kim Wellgren, the longtime editor of Wood Floor Business. This episode is part 2 of our latest fascinating conversation with lifelong wood floor pro and restoration expert Michael Purser of Rosebud Company in Atlanta. If you haven't heard part 1 yet, I highly recommend you go back and listen to that first. If you've already listened to it, let's jump right back in.
It's fascinating. I know a few years ago they came up with that like ribbon tape you put on floor and the little router reads everything. We used to use a flush cut 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch bit, set your collet depth, use a collet so that you can use an edge guide and go. And I've seen people like they're craftsmen at it. And there's a way to use a router. You can't just go flying with the grain. You cut against it. To watch somebody actually do a Dutchman with a router is pretty serious business. That's a craftsman's skill. When you go from getting all that set and all that done, and you go back to the chemistry, and now you're about to, get into the finish part of it, and you mentioned, I want to go back a second. When you have a floor, let's say it's got lead paint, which you see all the time, all this other stuff. Is it chemical first to dissolve and remove that, not machines and a lot of scraping? I've done this. How do you get those that chemical from staining and embedding itself in the new wood, or you don't?
The chemicals that we were working with, they did not. They were there. It was a pretty thick. No, it was almost like it wasn't syrup, but it was thicker than that.
Applesauce, like 5F5. It was like applesauce. You could spread that stuff around.
Yeah, and fortunately we didn't have to worry about. We would put it down, and it does. I mean, if something was painted, it would take multiple applications, and you just had to kind of wear it down. But we never ever sand any of that. None of that goes airable. What do they call it? Friable or whatever. It's not airborne. There's no lead. It's all going to be taken off, and we take it right off the floor, put it in. It goes into a shop vac, and then if we don't, I mean, we very rarely work on lead paint, but it then goes into a container, and nothing in that container. Well, if it did have lead paint, it would be has a hazardous material.
Right.
But otherwise, it's not hazardous material. The chemicals that I work with were called methylene into methylene pyrrolidone, and it was actually a solvent that they used in the waterborne industry. I think I may be wrong. They may not use it anymore, but it's a fairly benign product. I've had to we put using that product into a kind of a holding pattern. It's a long, involved story, but bottom line is manufacturers could not manufacture it at the price they had to sell it at. It's a great product, but the price of it was high. And so they just decided, and the EPA said there's a problem here. And I've talked with the EPA. I've sent them videos of us. Matter of fact, I sent them videos of us working at Ford House. And they said, we've never seen people using it like that. They were thinking in terms of the homeowner taking it into their house, getting it on their hands, getting it on their clothes, having children around, or just being careless. If the professionals, I mean, they know how to work with stuff. They don't want dermal contact. They don't want that stuff on their skin. They don't want to be breathing it. They'll wear breathing apparatus if it does have vapors that are hazardous. This particular product did not. The big thing you had to worry about was dermal contact. And dermal contact is the easiest thing to protect yourself from of all forms of hazardous materials.
At what point did hardening oils come in? Were there original older ones, or are we talking about the newer things today, like Miracle Oil and Magic Oil and craft oils?
I got a hold. I think I went back and looked at my notes I was looking at certain projects where I used, at that time, it was called Trip Trap. and it came out of Sweden. It's now called Woka.
Yeah.
It went through a name change. It may have gone. There may have been some others, but that goes all the way back to about 2000. Yeah, 2006. I used it on a great restoration project on DuPont Circle in Washington D.C. They had a oil, master oil. Yeah, that was what they called it, master oil. And then after that, it became diamond oil, I think. And they were good. And they also had a product that you could put on it to enhance the look. I tested it like I did anytime I went and started using new finishes. I would test it. I didn't have the warehouse anymore, so I have these test samples that are about a 12 inches wide, 3 feet long, and they're oak. I got some that are pine. Put the product down on it, let it cure, and then just start, go in there with the ketchup, go in there with the Coke, go in there with the wine, pour it on there, leave it on there, walk out, and just let it alone, see what happens. Most of the time, it cleaned right up. Other times, it's like, okay, we got a little problem here. And then how do you resolve it? Okay, we make another application. Okay. So you learn, again, you want to be a student. So you're going to learn about this product so that when you use it, you can turn right around and tell people, here's how it's going to be maintained. I mean, that's the big thing to me, about the hardening oils is not that their maintenance is it's not harder at all, but there are certain things that you do need to be more conscientious about. I mean, they'll get dirty. I've done a lot of rooms, ballrooms, rooms that where weddings take place, and there's food, there's beverage, there's dancing, there's chairs and everything. They'll get dirty. But what's really neat, I shot a video one time of a floor that I had done with, I'm sure it was Woka it was Woka. And I used a white oil, and that thing just got filthy. And the homeowner she was like, oh, God, Michael, this thing, and I said, I'm a good friend of mine, Brenda and Tom. I said, Brenda, hold my beer. Figurative. Hold it. I said, watch this. And so I just started going over with a cleaner and a red pad on the buffer, and the dirt just came right up. I thought she was going to leave her husband for me. She was just good. She's like, I can't believe you did that. And it's like, yeah, you just got to be more diligent about cleaning it.
Right.
I said, you're letting this stuff, you're letting people walk in here. And I said, you got to go back in there and clean it every now and then. So it's, I've got a. I'm very proud. I seem to when these new products come out, I'm going to find them. I'm going to test them.
Yep.
And if they don't pass the test, it's like, okay, then I'll just move on.
Well, you
If
have
they
to,
do,
right? You're balancing that you vowed to make a preservation, but you also need to deliver some type of performance, right? That's got to be
oh yeah,
that is the juggling act, I would think.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I go back to that thing about you go in there, you give it your best, and you walk away, and things are looking really good. And again, you're handing the keys to a car or something. You're giving something that they've never had to work with, or they're not that knowledgeable. They're the homeowner, they're the executive director of a museum, the curator, and it's like, listen, we're going to sit down and we're going to have a long conversation here, and I get them. It's all in writing too. I mean, if they have pets in the house, I've got an article I wrote. Here's what you do. You got animals cohabitating with you now. There could be problems. If you're gonna, what about that occasional thing where the floor sits there, nothing's happening, and then you're gonna have a wedding reception?
Right.
You're gonna have your husband or wife's retirement party, and people are doing things in the house that they never done before in some respects, and may regret it when the film is developed or when people start posting it on, like, yeah, here's what George did at his retirement party. We never knew this about George, but look at this.
Wow.
So, I try and cover all the bases. I've got not that I've done rental property that much, but I went to the trouble of writing. Here's what you do if you got. Or, I mean, I know what I was doing before. People had Airbnbs or VRBOs. It's their house, it's their property, it's their investment. It's like, well, here comes people vacationing. You think they care whether or not they bring a keg of beer inside? No. So anyway, that's
Performance.
yeah, and you got to make sure that they have a clear understanding of what they're what they're facing.
I love the behind the scenes. I know I was talking to some guys down south that had done the work in the White House properties and that, and I remember saying, "Wow, I just saw the NATO summit. Your floors look great." And they're swearing up and down. They're dragging 250 chairs all over my floor. We just
Yeah.
finished that. That was an 8-year contract. And I go, well, you're going to get a $1 million buffing coat tomorrow morning, aren't you? But you're right. It's that performance of look at this beautiful thing we did, and yet it's still a hardwood floor. I once walked into a house and there was a painter putting his cigarette out on my floor. I hadn't even got in to do the sand and finish yet. I was so mad I took my boots off. He goes, "Thanks for taking your boots off." I put them on my fist and started pounding the walls where he was painting, one after the other, after the other, after. I've had it with you people and your cigarettes and spray painting on my floors. And that is not normal wear and tear like you're talking about. You just said it. What if there's a wedding? Okay. What if there's a fundraiser? There's traffic flow coming through. That's a little different than somebody just abusing my work.
Mm.
Have you ever
Yeah,
had to
that's
be called back in to go fix something and that you were like, really, did this really have to happen on my floor?
Oh, I was thinking, yeah. Last big project we were working on was just Ford's Edsel Ford's place up in Grosse Pointe.
Yeah.
And we had finished. We typically will go through and we'll do sections from start to finish. I mean, we had about 8 rooms to do. And in one of the phases we came in and did the French parlor, which is a large room, about 800 square feet. And it had teak herringbone and beautiful floor. And while we were there, we had put that was the first phase. Months later, we came back to do the second phase, and we were setting up our equipment in the teak or in the French parlor. We put down the ram board and all the protective stuff so that we could stage our materials in there. And so while we were there, one of the people in maintenance brought a cart down to that level, and one of the plastic wheels on the face of it locked up. And on those plastic wheels, they've got this little raised thing in the center of the wheel. It comes from the cast or whatever.
Yep.
And she just pushed it. And she said, I knew something was wrong because it wasn't moving that easy. And she just creased that floor about 10, 15 feet. And they just about died. They were apologetic and everything. I said, look, just don't worry about it. And so we got down, I got down there personally, and it was magical. Yeah. Yeah. What's her name? Paulman's magical.
Magical.
And I just reapplied over it, and there was no stain. It was clear oil. There was no stain or anything because all those old houses, everybody thought they stained them. No, they didn't either. They just put down clear finishes over the oak, the teak, the walnut, whatever, and then those aged. And I got back and repaired it in no time, and they were just ecstatic. And the young woman, I mean, she was ready to break out in tears. She said, I thought I was going to lose my job. I said, no. I said, but you did learn important lessons that I think you can teach to others. Check the casters. I don't know if they've got locking devices on a lot of those things. And it may have been that the caster or wheel was not unlocked. I don't know what the problem was.
Well, that's my jump off point. So that was our next thing to talk about was or Ford's house. But jumping into that and you get a call for a project like that, do you study or read the story of the floor, or can you mentally get a picture of what's going on and then you decide, I think I know how we need to treat this? Do you do a background, or you just have an artistic feel for it? In this particular case, explain to me what this floor looked like and its significance and how you decided to approach, caring for it.
Well, all of my projects, of that at that level, I tell them up front, there's going to be an on-site visit. I'm going to spend a good day, sometimes a day and a half, testing products to make sure I can get everything that's on the floor off. And then I go through and then start doing the documentation of the various, if there's a variety of species of wood, if there are the way it's installed, the logistics, because that's a big factor because, these are big houses. Edsel Ford's house is about 35,000 square feet. And that for us was kind of in the mid range.
Okay.
We've had two houses that were in the 60 to 65,000 square foot range. And those took, and one of them took like 10 years. The project was stretched out over 10 years. But I'm going to look at the logistics, and then we sit down. But I do want to know about the material, because that's just the part of me that likes the preservation. I'm going to learn the history. And at Ford House, it was rich with history. Like I said, you had teak herringbone floors in the French parlor. In the dining room and morning room, you had quarter sawn oak herringbone. And then in the um, library and study, you had floors that probably dated to a house that was built in the 17th century. That was, well beyond the 250-year-old benchmark that I've used, and that had never been sanded, and that they were removed from some old manor houses, some of which were just, taken down. They would take the products that came out of them: doors, mantels, paneling, flooring, window trim, and people would buy that. There were people who specialized in that type of market. And then we go into what is the gallery area, and I came across a floor. And as soon as I walked in there, I was just thinking out loud. I said, "This is a veneer." And it's beautiful, wide, quarter sawn oak. I don't remember the dimensions. It had probably at least 8 to 9 inches wide. I think it was random width, but they all looked at me and said, "How did you know it's a veneer?" And I said, I worked on too many of these. And I said, "I'll find a spot and I'll show you." And sure enough, I did, where slight chip, and it was a 3/8 of an inch thick. And then what made it really sweet, Stephen, I eventually found the manufacturer of it. It was Indiana Hardwood, who had plants in eastern Michigan and no, eastern Ohio, and then northern Michigan. And then to make it even better, again, I go down rabbit holes. I found a catalog, and in that catalog, they listed the where their flooring had been bought and installed, and there was Henry Ford's house, Edsel Ford's house in one in Dearborn, the other in Grosse Pointe. I found the house that I did in Akron, Ohio, which was Stan Hewitt. That was a laminate, or not laminate, but a veneer. And so it was really a lot of fun. So that way I learned the age of the wood. I know more about it, how it was made, and then I feel a lot more comfortable. Some people would say, "You're going to put liquids with chemicals on a floor that's a veneer. Aren't you afraid that you're going to get some delamination and that layer popping up?" And you maybe could, but we knew that when we put the product on there, the chemical stripper on there, it doesn't stay on long because it starts working very quickly, and we get it off, and then there's a residue, and we immediately attack that with synthetic pads that are what are known as open weave.
Mhm.
And it's not the maroon pad. It's thinner and it's pretty aggressive, and it starts collecting any residue on the top of the wood, and that way you get it clean. You'd asked before about how do you clean it off, and we just go after it with the typical. We actually mix squeaky, basic coating squeaky, with 90% or 90% alcohol.
Mhm.
Buy it in a drugstore, and then we add a little bit of a, what do they call it? Oh, I'll think of it in a minute. But basically, we put a little bit of something like dish soap in it.
Sure.
It actually it helps to give it a little bit of foam. Not a lot. It doesn't suds up. We're not trying to do that. And then just water and clean it off real good. And you don't have to neutralize it, but you do all that background work. And then when you go in there to do the work, that's when each room. I'll do a diagram. I know how wide the strips have to be, and I'll lay it out. Um, I don't know how you. You just almost like you're putting up wallpaper, how you go up 3 foot wide or whatever the strips are, start on one side and progress your way across. We do something similar to that. We work in long strips that are about 3 feet in width, but they can be 12, 15, 20 feet long. And then gradually you just progress across the room. And it's a very different approach.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but historically, if I'm right here, Henry Ford's son was Edsel. He became
Correct.
the president and CEO of Ford Motor Company. Although his father was still alive, he was famous for making like the world's most disastrous car, the Edsel. However, he was actually highly successful as an executive of that company. Sadly, he was remembered for that. But that's why these houses, we would call them mansions. But was that Edsel and Eleanor, that was their home when he was running Ford Motor Company? And can I have an idea what the time frame that was?
Yeah. The house was built in 1931, right in the middle of the Depression.
Yeah.
And so it was designed by Albert Kahn, and Edsel and Eleanor moved into it. It's right on the shores of St. Clair. And yeah, Edsel had the eye. He had a design DNA or whatever in him. Henry had none of that.
That's
Henry
what
was
they
a
said.
genius.
Correct.
Henry was an engineer. He was a genius, but he had no eye really for design. Edsel got all of that DNA. Now, you mentioned the Edsel car. In Edsel's defense, he had been dead for 20 years when that car came out. He died. I mean, it was very tragic. If he was 50, he was barely 50 years old. He moved into that house in 1931. No, it was built, maybe it was finished in 1931, 33. He died in 1943 during World War II while it was still going on full tilt. I got far more interested in Edsel than I did Henry.
Mhm.
I mean, I learned an awful lot about it. He was everything that you heard was, this is one of the kindest people you could possibly imagine. And when you walk into his house, I mean, I've been in these houses. I mean, Edsel Ford was a really, really wealthy man, but you would not have known it. He didn't flash it. He could have built something the equivalent of the Taj Mahal. He could have gone glass, steel, modern, whatever, but he didn't. He got Albert Kahn, and when you walk into that house, it's almost like you're walking. Oh, it's almost like you're walking into an embrace. It's just It's just handsome. It's not glitzy, it's not, it's just one of the most tasteful structures I have ever been in. I just fell in love. Of all the old houses I've ever done, and that one really just swept me away.
It's
I
not
mean,
ostentatious like the mansions
no,
in
no,
Rhode
no, no,
Island and the
no. But then you're walking through you're walking through the house, and they have the reproductions. He and his wife had the originals. You're walking down into the French parlor. On the left there is a Paul Cézanne. I mean, it was one of the many. There was a mountain that Cézanne, he painted it, I mean, like umpteen times. Do you walk into maybe it was either the dining, no, maybe it was either the library, dining room, or the morning room. And there is Van Gogh's The Postman. I mean, it was there. That's what they had. You walk up the stairs, you get to the top of the landing, and there is a portrait of Edsel, and you see it, and you immediately, Diego Rivera did that. Good God!
does it worth more than the house?
Yeah, I mean, it's just nonstop. I mean, but he had. I mean, I would love to have spent time with him and Eleanor. I mean, I think that they were very, very civic minded. One of the best art museums in the country is the Detroit Institute of Art, and they donated a lot of their artwork to the DIA, and it became like the cornerstone of the DIA. I mean, he like fast boats. And you should see. I mean, I got some great photographs of the cars that he designed. Some of them, like there was one built, and I mean, he just had that look. He's the one that pioneered the look of the Lincoln. I think it was like 1934, 1938, but it was like, this is just defines a luxury, an American-made luxury car.
Right.
Not a Rolls Royce, Ferrari, whatever, But man, it could go head to head with them any day of the week. So he was a very fascinating guy.
That's amazing. So, and you get a project like that. Well, I got a couple questions, but how do they reach out to you for that? Did you say, I see this, I'm going to go bid it, or did they go looking for you for this project?
Stephen, a very good question. It just so happened that my very first big historic preservation project was in Akron, Ohio. House is called Stan Hewitt, and it was built by F.A. Seiberling. And F.A. Seiberling is the guy who I think he bought Goodyear from the brothers. And he took Goodyear and made it into an international firm. And Stan Hewitt felt it was one of those that was in the 60 to 65,000 square foot range. And I bumped into I got to know a guy named Mark Hepner, who was the assistant curator. Mark and I just went at it. I mean, we were just like two guys in a ring, and we had a blast.
Yeah.
I mean, verbally, we were just like playing ping pong, slinging slurs, jokes, just back and forth. He was the guy I can go. He was one of the few people that I've ever met there. And we just had a blast. He could go toe to toe with me. Well, Mark moved on from Stan Hewitt, and he went out to Davenport, Iowa, and worked for a while in another mansion. And then he started, I mean, he was building his credibility and his stature within the, house museum group, within the museum world in this country. And lo and behold, he gets a call from the people who said, we're looking at restoring Henry Ford's house in Dearborn. He came on board there, and he called me up in 2015. My wife and I remember it vividly. We were doing a month in Tucson, Arizona, her hometown. And, of course, he had to be a smart ass, just like he knew he was dealing with a smart ass, me.
Yeah.
And he said, how would you like to do Henry Ford's house? And I don't know, but I said, man, I'm close to retirement. I don't need this kind of stuff. Leave me alone. Lose my number. And he said, no, I'm serious. And I said, okay, let me come take a look at it. And I did. And he got that project, and then I thought, we're done. That's it. I'm done with all the Fords. I knew about Ford House. I'd been there. I'd been there a lot. I'd stayed in their guest house when we were doing work on Henry's house. Lo and behold, 2 or 3 years later, he calls me up and says, you want to do another Ford House? I said, what are you talking about? And he said, how about doing Edsel's Fords? And I mean, my heart just came out of my chest. I said, you cannot be serious. I said, I'll walk up there if I have to get that job. And I went up there, and it may be my swan song, but I knew Mark. He and I had a history. We'd done some phenomenal projects together. And Mark Hepner has made a name for himself within the museum industry. He's one of the top in the country. People know him for what he is, and he is a leader in that area. And I count my lucky stars knowing people like that.
Oh, you would think so. We just had our Christmas dinner at this, what they claim to be the oldest inn in the country or in Massachusetts. And they were this one room, and the woman said, just so you know, this room especially was left for Henry Ford when he visited Massachusetts. And this is where he studied, this is where he stayed, in all the little rooms, all in this, 200-year-old house with old floors. And it was like a ship's cabin. Everything was tiny. The hallways were tiny. Comparatively, that room was massive. It was 5 times the size of the other rooms. It wasn't that big, but that was his private room. And you get to look at that architecture. So when you were telling me about these projects, it's just amazing that you got a hold of something like this, and it's become something that you can get, that you can do. That I'm telling you, I don't know a lot of floor people that get into this part of this. But when you get this project, and I'm going to steal your verbiage alone, where you've said to me, there's an architectural intent, and then there's your material palette. What did that look like on this project? Getting past being awestruck, you walk in, you go, well, did you have old patch repairs, new patch repairs, original, everything all mixed match? What did it look like when you got a hold of it?
Well, first of all, we knew that since the house had been built in early 1930s, that the floors had never been sanded at all.
Okay.
We also knew that at least 3 of the rooms, I mean, the herringbone we knew had been sanded originally, but after that, the other rooms where you had the reclaimed wood that came out of these old houses in England, hell, it had never been sanded. I mean, it was like over probably 250, 300 years old. and it still had materials on it that had just accumulated over the centuries. It had never been sanded. And then we go into the other room where we had the veneer. It went down, and they just finished it off. Again, no sanding. They wanted the variations to height level. They wanted it to look a little more rustic. So in this case, there was no architect per se. I'm dealing directly with the people who run it. And so you sit there and it's like, okay, folks, it was a private residence. It's been a museum now for a pretty good while, but you're ready to put the pedal to the metal because they had just built a beautiful new welcome center, that goes along with the house. And they said these floors are just they're going to get hammered. So we had to drop back. We knew that the floors had some type of coatings on them. I would guess that it probably had something like a shellac, or it could have been a linseed oil, but I would guess shellac. And then over that, they had been applying clear waxes on the oak floors, the quarter sawn oak or the herringbone oak. And then they made a lot of use of tinted waxes on the old English floors and on the veneer. And those floors had changed their and so what you're thinking, I told him, I said, now listen, when we take these old waxes off, that floor is going to be lighter. That's what that's what Edsel and Eleanor and the family saw. Okay. It got darker because of the tinted waxes, and also because waxes are notorious. They will collect and hold dust, and they don't necessarily age as well as other products. And it's not a bad thing. It's just, if you know that, then you're not going to be surprised when it comes off. If you don't know it and it comes off, it's like, whoa, this floor is a lot lighter than we thought. That's right, but that's what they saw. So you have to kind of prepare, and I was doing samples. I always do samples. Like I said, I go there and I do the samples and come here, take a look at this. This is what the floor looks like minus the old age wax or finish. And you can replicate that look most of the time just by taking, you very quickly dampen a cloth, rub mineral spirits or water. It's like, okay, take a look right now. That's what they were looking at, in 1930. So, and it's like, okay, well, can you get it to that point and then give us a product that we can bring tens of thousands of people through here on these tours and not have, these mountains of maintenance bills? And it's like, yes, that's when I said, and we're going to be using the hardening oils. Because when I found out and I knew that the public would be allowed to walk directly on some of those wood floors, I said, no, we're not going to put a coating down. That's too much stress. And I don't know. I just said, we don't want to do that. Mark he understood. And I had done that to Henry Ford's floors. I'd used the same product, and they were extremely happy, and the floors are holding up beautiful. They were holding up really, really well.
Well, if history's colliding with modern day expectations, it's just different.
Yeah. And I would point out, Stephen, that like when they take off the old coatings, the pigmented paints on the walls, on the ceilings, on the trim, they're not going to go back with the exact same formula. It's not, you're not bastardizing a house. You're doing exactly what the original builders would have done. And that is, I want to put the best product that's going to hold up the best. It's not going to degrade in color or fade or whatever. And, and you're doing it so it looks like and they're seeing something. Had Edsel and Eleanor walked in the room, I'm quite confident they would have said, yeah, this is how we remember it. And, over the years, it aged. It got, even houses like that are going to, the aging process, there's airborne particles, there's dirt, there's all kinds of stuff that gets on that surface.
This episode is brought to you by Odie's Oil. Developed by a wood flooring pro, no finish is more safe, durable, beautifying, and versatile, with lower cost and higher profit margin. Experience the pinnacle of finish with free on-site demos and training. Learn more at odiesoil.com. That's ODIES oil.com.
Our last podcast I had done with Jaco Waldenberg, who's an artist, and he did the Night's Watch. And I thought, well, I better do a little research. And I love art. I studied it in college. The Night's Watch was never called the Night's Watch. It was just a pictorial of these watchmen during the day. And over the centuries, it's a Rembrandt. It got so dark, they call, oh, this is the Night's Watch. No, it wasn't. It wasn't anything close to it. It had turned so dark and so dingy and so dirty. That's what it looked like. When they started to restore, they were finding other faces, other people. It looked like they were hidden, and no, they weren't. It just, the thing turned. I said to him, that's like flooring today. You walk in, you go, this is going to be a lot lighter unless you want us to actually turn it back to what it was. But you just said it. That's not what Edsel and his wife would have seen back then. They would have seen something much brighter, much cleaner, much neater.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that is something. Do you think that projects like this, because what happens, they get in the hands of the average pro floor guy with the equipment and all the other stuff, that this type of project would be an absolute shock to them. It's not what a typical floor pro. They see the Hummel come out of the truck. These people, they're going to fire them on the spot. This is not what we do.
I think that there have been my two brothers work with me on a lot of these projects, and other flooring people have come in and actually seen us in, as the work was evolving, as it was going. And I think that they just looked at me and they said, I never in my life would I have dreamed that you could do the kind of stuff. We use attachments on a buffer that you would just like, no, there's no way you can do that without just destroying the floor, the wood. And, we learned that when things are wet, they're a lot less aggressive to the wood. They can, once you turn an old finish into a solution, a liquid, you can do things to it that you wouldn't ordinarily think you could do to get it off. And, I think a lot of people who saw it for the first time or saw us doing it, they just said, this guy is one taco shy combination plate. I mean, he's full blown BS crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, but, it was just, again, it was trial and error. And I look back on it, and that old warehouse that I had, I learned a lot from that. And that's where I started the passive refinish process back in the late 80s.
How do you educate your particular consumer? You must have to go in and go, listen, here's what I do. You might have a whole other philosophy on what we do, and not every house is going to be one of the Ford family houses. Do you have to educate the homeowner about what an authentic restoration might be?
Yeah, if you're gonna go at that level, you do have to give them. I've got some. Again, I really have taken advantage of YouTube to put together some very simple videos. Most of them, the longest ones might be about 7-8 minutes long. Most of them are shorter, but I'll just say we're going to focus on this. You know, I've got one about just nothing but Dutchman, and that's all you're going to see. I don't try and expand it. I've got others, when we are not we do a lot of what I call clean and recoat, where we're not going to sand, we're not going to use any chemicals other than just clean the heck out of that floor and then make applications of a fresh finish. And I mean, I've been on down here, I've been out of Atlanta for 2 weeks. I got another 2 weeks before we head back. I've already sent a video of the clean and recoat to at least 2 people who were interested, and they didn't know what it was. And it's about a 5-8 minute video. And then they call me, that's what we want. Wow, that's exactly what I want. I don't want to sand the floors. I don't want, the finish just looks a little worn, and we want to refurbish it. So I have to say that this old man learned a new trick, and that was how to take on my Apple, my Mac, or whatever it's called. It's got iMovies, and it's real basic. It's very fundamental. It's not this high-end stuff, and I just take still shots, video clips, put them together, and I create these short videos, and it goes a long way in terms of introducing something to people and to educating them.
When you're educating them, you got to cover a few things, right? What you're going to do, what the materials you're using, and then you must go over, like we spoke earlier, about what are the limitations. Okay, this is wood, how you treat it, what you wear, high heels, bringing in dirt, having dogs, having pets. I mean, even modern day today, you might have this beautiful historic restoration. They might have a 200-pound Burmese mountain dog. I mean, you must go over all these little limitations and things that are involved.
Oh yeah, I sure do, and that's one thing that just in drilling down, and especially working with Kim and wood floor business, I've written a number of articles about specific things that are really challenging for people in the trade. But I think it's critical. I think it's every bit as important to leave your client knowledgeable about what they should and should not do, or can and cannot do, than it is in terms of drilling down and learning about the finishes. I mean, I to me, it is the so what do they call it? Like the third leg on the chair or whatever is. I mean, it's a cornerstone. If they don't know how to take care and maintain that floor, and then they start screwing up, and then they start telling people walk in here and it's like, whoa, this is not looking real good. Yeah, so and so did that project, and it's giving me nothing but headaches. That's your good name and your good reputation going down the drain. So, and and the time spent on training them, educating them, and giving them access to, they call me up couple of years later. I've had clients call me 10 years later. A guy called not long ago, he had some water damage on a floor. And of course, the people were saying you need to get new wood, put it down. I said, no, 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 no. It was at, straight edge decorative face nail floors. They did that. It had the design pattern. I said, good friend of mine, he's got a real nice guy. I said, you can't just leave it alone. We're going to come over there. We took it up. Jenna took it back to her place, and we managed to get that floor flattened. It had cut. I said, don't take old wood and start sanding it. I said, it will resettle. It's going to take time, but Jenna took it up, and in that way we were able to get the subfloor underneath dried out. And it took, I think that she had it up at probably 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Went back over there, put it back down. I mean, you have no idea that the floor was even damaged at all. So if they have a problem with stuff like that, and I've done the work. Hey, they have my number. I mean, I'm happy to go back and talk with them and work with them.
Today, whether it's flooring or it's a medical field or whatever it is, everybody's always into second opinions. And I can go find 100 flooring people to come in. I don't know where I would find a floor restoration expert. Do you run into others, and how do people spot a good one from a bad one? Because there's got to be bad ones.
Well, for better or for worse, and I have to say this, we were the only company that offered the passive refinishing where we would come in and chemically remove coatings. There were a couple of other people that tried it, and I have seen examples of their work, or I have heard other people talk about it, and then they've seen what we've done. And so you're not right now going to find anybody that can do, the chemical removal. There's some that have tried it. I saw a video just the other day, somebody up in, yeah, it was up in New York, and they were using it, and the way they were using it and doing it, it's not at all the way we would do it. But they were using chemicals. I was a group that I wouldn't mind talking to, because I don't need to worry about they don't need to worry about their secrets. I'm not interested in that. But I do like the fact that some people are actually kind of like, okay, let's get this off without sanding, and let's get this off with, minimal loss if there's any repair work to be done of it. You have to network through people who are familiar with historic preservation. I've been very lucky. I've been on some great projects. And over the years, I've built up some relationships with people who are very focused on very specific things. And, it's one of those, the best. What was it? A guy said one time, he said, if you want to make people in historic preservation mad, just be able to make a living doing it.
Right.
And I heard that. What does he mean? He's like, because the phone won't be ringing off the hook, number one.
Right.
And half the time, they're just like, I know that you can do this, but I don't want to pay that kind of money. It is going to be more expensive. But you say, okay, well, it's your floor, and you're the one that makes the calls. You have to. I network. I know people who can do a lot of. I've run into some great people who work with stone, bricks, masonry, limestone. You go up into Canada. Ooh, concrete is a big deal. I never knew until I was in some conferences in Ottawa and Vancouver. Ooh, concrete. You want to get the people up in Canada talking, you just start talking about concrete in the summer. and in the winter and what happens and masonry and all that. It's a big deal. So I've been very fortunate. Met a lot of good people who do different things. And if I were there, I mean, I would start just looking. The internet can be your friend. Go down those rabbit holes, and then you find somebody, and then you start trying to do the due diligence and find out if they got a portfolio. Do they run the projects? Do they act as, how do they run it? How do they, what do they do? They're just a lot of questions. It's a specialized area, but it's been a very fun area to work in.
And it's fascinating. I have come across restorations because I'm in New England. I've been to the Boston Museum of Fine Arts, the Boston Ballet Company, but then you come up to the hills of New Hampshire where I live, and I did a 250-year-old monastery. But there have been situations, Michael, where I've gone in and said, we have equipment and we have sanders and we can't hand carve these floors, and we just don't have that if that's what you want. And we did have a house that a photographer from Rolling Stone bought up in the hills of New Boston, and they wouldn't allow us to use electricity. It had to be hand this, hand that. We tried for 2 straight days with hand scrapers, and we couldn't do it. We said, you got to find a restoration company. They allowed us to do one of the floors and had someone do the rest by hand. It is a whole different ball of wax. And the machines produce something that, like you said, it'll look lovely, but it's not a restoration, what we were doing. I think everything that you brought to the table, it's amazing what we just went through. And this is your second podcast. We've been through, this is a whole other set of material from the last time. So I would like to let you off the hook because we've covered so many things, and hopefully Kim at Wood Floor Business will let us do a 2, 3, 4, 5-parter with this one. But could I give you your quick fire question so you could escape me?
Yeah.
I can't believe how long we've been over this. I feel like it's been 5 minutes, but it has not. I would like to give you your quick fire questions and a couple more little wrap up questions because I'm greedy, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure.
All right. Here we go. Listen, Kim Walgren, she's like, can we please try? Men can't do this. We'll turn every one of these into an essay. We'll try to be as brief as we can. So I tried to make them as simple as possible. I ask, you give me an answer, we move along. Here is your first question. If you weren't a restoration pro, a floor pro, what would you be doing instead?
Now, you asked me this question before, and the answer is still no. I can't. I'd love to fly airplanes. I'd love to fly commercial. I just love to fly. I got my pilot's license, got my private. But I hadn't been I hadn't been flying a planes. And, my wife just said, you put that on hold. We got children. So I did, but I love airplanes. And I would love to be a commercial pilot or just a pilot, period.
Of all the historical finishes and your chemistry that you use, is there any one historic finish that you wish modern day contractors just understood a bit more or even used a bit more?
And like you said before, wax waxes themselves, wax surfaces are beautiful.
Yeah.
I waxed the paneling in my dining room. I've got these real old dark cherry, and they needed to be cleaned up. And during the pandemic, I was just sitting around twiddling my thumbs. It's like, good Lord, what am I going to do? So I went in there, and my daughter and I cleaned them up real good. And I said, okay, what am I going to finish them with? I could have finished them with anything. And I went out to the shed, and I came back in with dry wax, and I just polished the hell out of them, and they are gorgeous. I would like, and I don't know, I wish that there was a product that you could put under waxes that was as stable as the hardening oils, or that had the chemical resistance. Because I do like a wax look. It's attractive. It won't stay. And as long as, when people start scuffing it and everything, but it is, and I mentioned a project earlier that I had done, and that one was walnut, big wide slabs of walnut. It was a veneer. And that floor, I had more fun waxing that floor. I, I all I could think about, I was doing with my Clark FM 15-inch buffer, and I just thought, I kept mentally thinking about the frotteur. I said, if I didn't have the buffer, I would definitely learn how to skate with those brushes on my feet. But I wish there was a product that you could use like that and get good performance. Because I'm not opposed to waxes. I just know that they're cosmetic. You just don't think that they're going to be able to stop a lot of stuff.
I got you. All right. Of all the projects that you've done, Was there one particular project that taught you about restraint? Like in this particular project, you thought, you know what, less is more. This is just a less is more thing. Is there a particular project that might have given that vibe?
Probably was Montpelier, because it was a challenge to get everything off, and there was a lot of stuff. We didn't want to erase, the fabric, so to speak, or the look of the floor, but there were things that we could have, that I think the floors are left raw.
Yeah.
I mean, there was no finish on them. There was no nothing, with the exception of 3 or 4 rooms, and in those rooms, we just put wax. And I kind of wish that we had been able to do something in those other areas, but during James and Dolly's time there, they didn't, that they knew of. That when the DuPonts bought the house, then they started putting chemicals on the floor. No surprise there. But anyway, that's probably where I had to kind of draw back and just, okay, folks, that's, you tell me it, then I'll keep my mouth shut.
If you could go back in time to any century, could you pick one particular craftsman or person that you would say, oh, I would go back and work with them for one day. It would be amazing.
Well, I'm very fond of stickly furniture. We've got some, and not old. We've got the new stuff. I would love to go back and see some of their techniques and how they do it. They're the ones that would fume oak, and that was something that, I mean, I know a fair amount about finishes and oak and everything, but this is something that was just flat out deadly. I mean, it's where you take a room, and I think it's ammonia or something, and I mean, when you fume it, the oak starts changing color, because obviously, I guess, because it's doing something to the uh, oh gosh, what is it in oak that makes it
The
darker? The
tannins,
tannin, yeah.
tannic acid.
Starts reacting with the tannin, and it starts going uniformly darker. And when it works, it's a very unique, very, very unique process. And I would say something like that. Also, I've seen some really neat stuff of all places, on Antiques Roadshow. There was a Japanese guy out on the West Coast that did this just drop dead gorgeous furniture. And I mean, it was simple, it was style wise, it was just curves. I mean, it was not ornate. It was not ornate at all. And it's that kind of woodworking, I think I could get a kick out of watching and being a part of it if I could learn it.
Well, everything today is on television is in series, right? You'll watch a whole block, season 1, episode 1, 2, 3, 1 through 10. So if you produce the Edsel and Eleanor Ford House project and you put it on TV, what's the first episode called? Give me a name. You're the producer. Give me a title for that project.
It would be, I would love, it would have to be the relationship between Edsel Ford and Albert Kahn. He was an architect that I'd never heard of him, but man, did he, I mean, we know about Frank Lloyd Wright, we know about Pye, we know about all these other famous and all that kind of stuff. But man, Albert Kahn was just off in this world. He was German or Austrian, I think. And he knew how to work with light. And that to me is a big, big deal. He built a lot of Henry Ford's plants, the production plants, but he also built just these gorgeous homes. And I would love to have been a fly on the wall to hear the conversation between Edsel, he knew design, and then Albert, he knew architecture. And let's bring these two together and see what we can come up with. Because I, you know, it's that, and then another episode would be the conversation between Edsel Ford and Jens Jensen, who I'd never heard the name before, but evidently during his day, he was right up there with Olmsted, Frederick Law Olmsted, who did Central Park. Jens Jensen was just this unbelievable landscape architect. And then from there, we would get into the other episodes and changes in the life and of that Ford House
Well,
is
you're a
exposed to.
restoration expert, so you don't have an Actors Guild card. So if you had, then now you got to choose who plays you in that series. Who's the actor that plays you in that series? Michael Purser.
Yeah, me? Oh, why did you
You'd
now?
make a great
Okay.
Clint Eastwood, but you got a little accent.
No, 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 no. I have no idea who I would even. Yeah, I have no. Food. I mean, my younger brother, I think he would do a great job. He's not an
Let him
actor,
do
but
it.
yeah, sure, let him do it. He and I, he we're only we are the quintessential Irish twins, 18 months apart in age.
See, there you go.
And I mean, we do think we can be going down the same rabbit holes. We like to imitate certain accents, and I mean we do that all the time. I mean, you name it. I mean, we can get together and be a good redneck. We can. I mean, that's just a fun thing to do. Who would I want to be an actor? Oh, have no
I'll
idea.
let you escape that one. So far, I think it was Liz Emlock came on Foreign Contractor. She's brilliant. She's the only one to date that's answered the quickfire questions with one-word answers, because I've told Kim, it doesn't work. Put two of us floor people. It just becomes the whole narrative. So it was great. This has been really fun talking with you, because this is something that I have a million customers. Not a million, but none of them are restoration experts. So having a chance to talk, it's different, and people are going to run into this, and they're going to know, well, maybe I better call this guy, because they're going to get in over their heads with certain things. You can't just throw a sander at just about anything. Tell me just real quickly, what do you got coming up in Wood Floor Business Magazine? You got articles coming out. Tell me just give me the Hollywood pitch there.
Okay, it's going to be about basically the impact and evolution of urethane finishes, and how they impacted the trade, and also how we kind of came out of this just world class depression, and we managed to come back, and we have now come to the point where, I mean, I am just proud as I can be of this trade. We've got incredible products, we've got incredible machinery, and the finishes, they couldn't be better. And you know that you know that there will be room for improvement. But I kind of trace the evolution of some of the finishes, and how they came through how they were passed on, and some of the stuff that I did to adapt to them and learn. And also, you've got to look at your clients and say, I'm here to teach you about how to live with this product. I mean, that's a huge component.
And if I'm right, the Rosebud Company, you're on YouTube, you got that. You've got Instagram, I'm pretty sure I've seen you out there. The Rosebud Company, you got a website? What's website?
Rosebudfloors.com that's our website. On Facebook, we are The Rosebud Company. On the YouTube channel, we are just Rosebud Company. And on Instagram, I think it's I don't do much with Instagram. Jenna does that.
Okay.
At Rosebud Company, I think.
Well, Michael Purser, you're a gentleman and a scholar. But people say that, but you're actually a gentleman and a scholar. So I know a party that's not so gentleman, because you're a maniac. but if you're a floor pro, you got it in your blood. So I really appreciate you being here with me. I'm going to look for those articles coming out in Wood Floor Business Magazine, and then usually it winds up in the digital edition too, for people that want to catch it online, etc. Our podcast should come out pretty soon, because they were really excited to get you and I together again and get some of this out there. So you're in the two-timer club. You're practically Tom Hanks. He should have just said Tom Hanks. We're in here.
Oh.
You've joined the elite group. There's not a third time for that.
I wouldn't mind meeting that guy. He's done some great stuff, but I don't think I think it'd be a step down to try and do me, Tom Hanks and do me. But I'm very flattered with that.
You couldn't take the pay cut though, because you're a restoration expert.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
He's had some pretty bad flicks. As much as I love the others, he's a couple goofy ones. Well, listen, thank you very, very, very much for being here. I can't thank you enough. So we've got it. Thank you for being on All Things Wood Floor for the second time.
Thank you, Stephen. You take care, and I hope you have a great 2026.
Thank you very much, sir. We will talk again. Take care of yourself.
All right.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you to Michael Purser for once again sharing his wealth of wood flooring expertise with All Things Wood Floor. You can find links to his latest article and all of his articles and blog posts for Wood Floor Business in the show notes for this episode. And thanks to this season's sponsor of All Things Wood Floor, Odie's Oil, the wood floor finish that is safe and beautiful while delivering a lower cost and higher profit margin. If you liked this episode, please rate and review All Things Wood Floor, and don't forget to subscribe.